social anxiety is a form of worry. It is sustained by worry. So let's talk about social anxiety. I mentioned some of the symptoms associated with social anxiety. The person becomes self-conscious when enduring symptoms of social anxiety. That self-consciousness does not only occur in the theater or stage of life where you're coming into a social setting where you feel that you may be assessed or judged by others. It actually occurs in our minds as scenarios in which we imagine ourselves being judged by others, and that's where the intervention occurs. Okay, so if you want to overcome your social anxiety, you will do it not only on the stage of life. That means when you come into a social situation, beginning to adjust in an adaptive fashion, cope in an adaptive fashion. We really do the major part of the work in the privacy of our mind. Why? Because we are generally building scenarios about entering social situations. These scenarios are forms of worry. They are your social anxiety. In other words, social anxiety is not as much the event that occurs on the stage of life where you meet somebody and you're talking to them and suddenly you can't hear them. You can't hear them because you're distracted with ideas about their judgment of you and how you appear to them. So we become less receptive in social anxiety, in a social anxiety situation. And that behavior is a conditioned response. So that conditioning actually needs to be interrupted during the day when you're not in a social situation. Otherwise, you really just, a dancer, for example, just can't get on the stage and dance. They have to be practicing daily, for example, at the ballet bar, to get up and before they dance on the stage. You just don't get up on stage and dance ballet. So, same way, when we want to overcome our socially anxious condition, we must find the source of the problem and begin our work at home, where we do all the negative conditioning. The maladjusted coping mode that sustains social anxiety is generally approval seeking, or, if you will, redeeming honor. In other words, you want to redeem your honor from dishonor. That's what you're afraid of. Humiliation, for example. So you're trying to prevent yourself from being humiliated. Trying to be impressive sometimes. Being impressive, looking good in the eyes of others. Status, achieving status, and then so that you could last be comfortable. So you're seeing that the core emotional wound in social anxiety is generally a form of defectiveness that is associated with social exclusion, and that sense that there's something wrong with you would dissolve, and you would learn that there's nothing wrong with you, save for the fact we put in place maladjusted coping modes that ironically, paradoxically even, entrench the idea that there's something wrong with you. So in other words, what we do is we attempt to fix ourselves. So if you just focus on fixing your problem, you are affirming that the problem exists. And there's the ironic situation where you are affirming, ironically, that there's something wrong with you when nothing is indeed wrong with you. When your fear drives the status seeking, that effort to gain status is in fact the inferiority complex. It is in fact the defectiveness schema. It is the source of your social anxiety. So that effort just entrenches the problem more and more. And you're busy working on improving your status, so to speak, not realizing that you're aggravating this unrealistic assumption that was made probably when you were a youngster under very real situations. I mean, where the mind came to the conclusion that there may have been something wrong with you. And you might have had a learning disability, for example, or your parents may have been alcoholic, or you may not have been at the same status as other children. You have also we're participating in an elitist culture, so you may have, for any reason, either gender or race or economic situation or information. You don't have information that others have, determined that you were less than, or believe that, oh God, I hope I'm not intrinsically less than. So that is the impression that we have. Can be reinforced also by parents who have social anxiety, moving around a lot, very shy parents, afraid of rejection, makes you then fearful yourself. And so that is the condition. And how does it heal? It heals by interrupting maladjusted behaviors. In other words, the pseudo-therapy of seeking status. Well, if I'm famous, then I'll surely not be forgotten. I will not be irrelevant. Or if you drive to be somebody important, for example, that very drive to be someone important is aggravating the idea that you are not important. You do not need to drive yourself to be important. You were never unimportant at any time in your history. It does not exist. So you need to let that go. So you're saying, well, what are you saying, Cesar? I need to let go of my hopes and aspirations? Yes, you need to let go of that preoccupation. You may proceed with your plans. However, we need to awaken to the fact that we are just life happening. We are moving along life horizontally. We have been left the legacy of life, and indeed there is a great deal of opulence and wealth that awaits us without any need to climb, for example. Status climbing, folks, is not equivalent to learning. If you go to school and learn a skill, yes, your status may change. However, the fact is that the education has provided you a way of making a transaction that you could not make before. It's really no gain in status. You now can transact and perhaps make some additional income from your enhanced knowledge base. It is not status. We forget that, and we suffer disabling conceit, which from time to time comes back and bites us in the butt, because we are elitists, and we're afraid of the humiliation that is underlying our conceptions. So let's return to the idea of Zen Buddhism and zazen. Again, Zen Buddhism is not the trappings of Zen Buddhism. You do not become a monk. A monk is not a monk. You become a Zen Buddhist. Well, a Zen Buddhist is not a Zen Buddhist. What we do is we practice non-conceptual awareness as Zen Buddhists. That means that we are really equivalent to a shadow forming when we have a candle in front of us, a shadow appears behind us. It is natural order. When water hits a roof, it moves apparently down the roof line. It moves. It moves. Why? How? Through natural law, through natural order. And we are that life, that natural order. And life forms as a whole. That means everything is important, and everything has, in a sense, an equivalent status. One thing does not exist without the other. A building does not exist without its foundation. The foundation of the building is as important as what you see above it. One cannot exist without the other. And so we awaken to this equanimity, to this equivalence that exists pervasively through the universe, and we begin to let go of the egocentricity that has so much to do with social anxiety. Social anxiety is indeed other-directed. It is forming as concerns about how people are perceiving us. We are in fact not minding our own business when we are symptomatic with social anxiety. Yes, you're not minding your business. Your business is not the opinion of other people. And we have been concerned with the opinions of others for so many years that it feels vacuous and a very uncomfortable emptiness when we stop fantasizing, talking to ourselves, or imagining ourselves as looking good, speaking to ghosts, for example, if you will, talking to somebody and imagining that you were effective in your communication and that you left a good impression. These types of ruminations are okay. However, folks with social anxiety do them much too much. How much too much? Perhaps 90% too much. In other words, they need to do about a tenth less and they'll feel better. Once you realize how much you're ruminating, it becomes a little easier to stop. People with social anxiety, very serious social anxiety, are really doing the maladjusted coping mode from morning till night throughout the whole day. In other words, all your thoughts are oriented towards seeking redemption and gaining honor and avoiding humiliation. And we must detect it, observe it, notice it, and then begin its interruption. And however, we do need to put in place the commitment, the surrender, if you will, to what may be characterized as a higher power. It is, in fact, if you will, the God principle. It is nature. It is no thing. And this no thing is everything. Everything. One thing without is one thing without another. In other words, everything included is not a thing at all. There's no comparison. So it is in fact empty.